The roots of professional wrestling are planted deep within the world of carnival sideshows, a time when wrestling was more than just a sport. It was a spectacle, an attraction designed to draw in the curious and entertain the masses. But for women, these carnival era offered a rare and challenging opportunity to step into the ring. Today, we're going to deep dive into this fascinating period and explore how it laid the groundwork for women's wrestling as we know it. So let's go back to the late 19th, early 20th century, right? So carnivals were at the height of their popularity and they're traveling from town to town that promised thrills and excitement. Wrestling became a staple attraction with promoters offering cash prizes to anyone that can beat their champion, but a challenge that a few could hope ever to win. These early wrestlers were known as shooters or hookers. They were legitimate fighters that were skilled in the art of submission. But as the need to entertain the crowd grew, the matches began worked. These outcomes were predetermined. This evolution marked the beginning of a scripted drama that now defines modern wrestling today. Now, while these men dominated these carnival circus rings, women were slowly making their entrance as often as part of the sideshow. Women's matches were promoted as novelties, something to shock and amaze the audiences. You have female wrestlers like Josie Wahlford and Miss Frankie that were marketed as rare spectacles in the sport. Their matches were framed as both exotic and taboo. Some women were even pitted against men in intergender matches, a move that designed more to titillate than to test the skill. But these matches were rarely taken seriously and often seen as gimmick matches rather than an actual pro wrestling match. Despite the spectacle, these women who participated and faced exploitation for lower pay, grueling schedule, and they had little control over their careers. Even in such a challenging environment, some women managed to leave their mark. Josie Wahlford, for instance, was one of the most earliest known female wrestlers known for taking on men and women alike in the carnival circuit. But the true shift began as wrestling moved away from the carnival tents and into more established venues and arenas and theaters. The transition was crucial for women in wrestling. Take Cora Livingston, for example, before Mildred Burke became the face of women's wrestling in 1930s, as we watched in the previous episode. Livingston was already holding her own, winning an early version of the Women's World Championship in the 1910s. This move from carnival to professional arenas laid the groundwork for formalization of women's wrestling. Now, after World War I ended, the carnival scene began to decline. New forms of entertainment like radio and eventually television started to take over. Wrestling followed that exact trend, shifting further away from its carnival roots into the mainstream sports entertainment. Now, with this shift, the women's wrestlers began to find more legitimate and structured opportunities, transitioning from carnival curiosities to recognized athletes in the professional promotions. So, what's the legacy of the carnival era? Well, for one, it introduced the concept of women as wrestlers to the public, a crucial step in sports development. Now, it reinforced stereotypes that would take decades to overcome, unfortunately, but these women were often seen as sideshow acts rather than serious competitors, a perception that lingered well into the 20th century. Now, despite all of these challenges, the women of the carnival era were pioneers. They faced a male-dominated, often hostile environment with incredible resilience. Their participation laid the foundation of the evolution of women's wrestling, setting the stage for future generations. Now, in conclusion, the carnival era was a pivotal chapter in the history of women's wrestling. They fought with exploitation and challenges, and it provided them to build the first platform for women to showcase their wrestling skills. But as the sport evolved, the legacy of these early women's wrestlers continued to influence the narrative, helping to shape women's wrestling as it moved into the mainstream. So, the next time you watch a women's wrestling match, remember, it all started in the dusty carnival, where the seeds of this revolution was planted. Until next time, folks.